Alright, greetings everyone. Hope this video finds you well. My name is Geoff Edwards, herbalist, gardener, and acupuncturist, here visiting the offices of P3 Development in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. I just want to take a walk around the grounds and show you some of the ornamental plants that are growing around here. We know that many of us grew up with parents who may have gardened, whether it was at your school, if you took walks around town, your neighborhood, you see that people grew ornamental plants or decorative plants around the yard. What many may not know is that so many of these plants have just wonderful benefits if you know what to look for and if you know what to plant. So we're going to walk around the garden here, just identify 3 plants which you may be familiar with, and hopefully there's some connection that you can make to grow that plant in the future, or if you find out that some of the indications for the plant relate to something that you or a loved one or a friend may be experiencing, then definitely some herbals to keep in mind and to speak with an herbalist about, and how you can incorporate this into your own wellness regimen. All right, so we're going to take a walk around and let's see what we can find. Alright, so here we are in the P3 garden, just taking around looking at some of the ornamentals that are growing around the office, and just want to point out some things that you might be familiar with in terms of growing, but not in terms of some of the other aspects of benefits of some of these plants. So here we have the commonly known as hydrangea. There's many varieties of this plant. Here we have the hydrangea arborescens, which we typically find with the white to greenish flowers, or what we call in TCM Shi Chu. There's another variety which is used from the Dicroa febrifuga, has the tendency to have a phthalitis to light violet to bluish flowers. And it's so similar related plants would having 2 different types of uses. Here with the Shi Chu, we find a plant that has a strong affinity for the kidneys and bladder, for the lower or for the urinary tract system in general. But when we think of stones, any type of calcifications of buildups leading to burning urination, anything of that nature, the roots and bark are also used in those cases for this plant here. And so when we also think of gout, again, any type of buildup of stones in the joints, any type of fluid metabolism issues leading to edema in the lower extremities of the body, the lower parts of the body, again, the roots of this plant are used here. Now for the other variety with the more violet flowers, the Changshan, we find that the roots are actually very widely known to treat heat in the upper lungs, or what we call dampness or phlegm build up in the lungs, along with heat as well. And so we find that is a very popular known medicinal used to treat malaria worldwide. This one here, a little bit more sweet. It says sweet along with pungent. So a little bit of spiciness. That's when we think of moving the phlegm. Lots of times the pungent flowers or pungent plants are used to clear and move in terms of when we think of the heat and the spice to help move dampness and phlegm. But then we also see the sweetness there, which lets us know it has some affinity for working and to help transform phlegm as well, which we find for a lot of herbs, which also have an affinity for the spleen, or the spleen, pancreas, and stomach systems. All right, so again, we have the hydrangea, very popular plant. I'm sure you have these growing in your neighborhood. You may have them in your yard, but here's a little nod to that. My grandmother grew hydrangeas around her home. So again, along with making the nod and knowing about the relationship to the medicinal aspects, it's good to have plants growing around that maybe your parents or your grandparents or some of your ancestors may have grown, for making deeper connections with the plants if that interests you. So again, Hydrangea Shi Chu or Chang Shan. All right, here we are with another commonly known ornamental plant known as the peony. Many of you may be lovers of this. You may grow this. The flowers produced on peonies make these huge, beautiful blooms that can be a variety of colors, sometimes white, sometimes pink, which is commonly known. But again, peony, another plant that was grown by my grandmother, so a bit of an ancestral connection there. But nonetheless, in TCM, what we refer to two different varieties of this plant which are used, commonly known as bai shao, which is the white peony root. In general, the roots of the plant are what's the medicinal parts that are used in herbal formulas and such in Chinese medicine. But then you have the bai shao, which is the white peony, and then the cher shao, which is the red peony. And so both of those plants, though having many common overlaps and used interchangeably sometimes, they do have a little bit different going on in terms of those specific indications. With the white peony have an affinity for the liver and the spleen, so it's a very yin tonifying and blood tonifying herb. So you see it used in lots of formulas for that reason. But then also commonly paired with licorice for conditions that involve many type of spasms, with limited blood flow and low blood circulation to the muscles and such, leading to spasms. And so we find the bai shao or the peony root commonly used with licorice in that case, and then many other times a common pairing we find it used with cinnamon or gui zhi. In that case, helping to build up the protective and nutritive aspects of the body. So when we think about the exterior of the muscles and the functions that our muscles and the exterior parts of our body and our skin and such are used to help, one, that nourish us and keep us cool and regulate body temperatures and such, but then also in terms of immune function, protection, what we call aspects of the wei qi, and those functions of making sure that we keep pathogens and such at bay by regulating the moisture and temperature at those skin levels and muscle levels just below the skin. So just another great plant to get to know. This is the peony, or again bai shao or cher shao. All right, and I would love to speak about this one here. We have the peach, botanically known as Persica prunus, in TCM, which we refer to the various parts of the fruit or of the plant based on the part that's being used. So, for example, we have the tao te, which is the fruit. All right, the tao ren, which is the pit. We have the tao ye, which is the leaves. And then we have the tao jiao, which is the flower jelly, or the jelly from the resin from the flowers. And so definitely wanted to give a nod to this plant. This is one that my grandfather, who actually happened to be a husband of my grandmother, who grew the hydrangeas and the peonies. So James and Beatrice Fair, just to say their names. But this is one that he definitely grew in his garden. So again, another plant that I have a connection to. Glad to see it in the garden here. So let's start with a little bit of doctrine of signatures, or the law of signature. And what that does is let us look at plants and look at the way that they grow, how they grow, different characteristics, which gives us some insight or clue into ways that those plants may be used, or the systems and bodily systems, organ systems and such, that they may have some affinity for. So when we look at the peach, we are familiar with the term peach fuzz, people going through adolescence, but just in general, little babies, the peach fuzz that grows. And so that fuzz, for humans, we call many times, particularly on the inside of the body and the lungs and the colon, are the cilia, the fine hairs. But in the case Here, the peach has these fine hairs, which are meant as a protective measure to keep parasites and bugs from being able to penetrate into the delicate, smooth skin, but then also it serves the function of keeping moisture from that skin, and so it has this protective while keeping and trapping in moisture, keeping excess moisture out. And so that same function of keeping debris and moisture from penetrating into the inner flesh or the inner tissues is what's occurring definitely in your lungs, the cilia, which help to remove dust and debris, any pathogens, parasites and such that may have gotten, or microorganisms that may have gotten into your respiratory tract, and then also in your GI tract and your colon. And so these small hairs are helping to move phlegm and mucus and toxic matter. You also have these small hairs in your nasal passageways, and so we just like to think of these types of related functions as ways of pinpointing and identifying really the best ways that these wonderful plant medicines can be used. All right. One thing that's interesting about the peach plant is that from a thermal aspect, the various parts of the plant which are used fall under different thermal qualities. So for example, the leaves, the flowers, and the pit are considered to be cooling in nature. However, the fruit and the flesh of the fruit is said to be more warming, having some affinity for the large intestine, the small intestine, so your GI tract, and your stomach, and being warming, helping to move pain and stasis, while also tonifying or building that vital energy or chi. So very interesting thing to note about the plant. The leaves definitely are cooling. We find them used for clearing out or working with to treat anyone who has parasites within their system. However, also used because of that cooling nature to help with very irritable membranes, irritated nasal passageways occurring with frequent allergies. We find it used in warming or warm-natured autoimmune disorders, but also that cooling and moistening nature, which helps to even work with indications where we have insomnia or experiences of anxiety that are related to, in some nature, relate to a stirring of internal warmth or heat. So the pits, or what we call taurin in TCM, is a very interesting piece. So the pit, or the seed inside the flesh, it is used, has an affinity for the heart, definitely your colon and your lungs. We've been saying a lot about those two systems when speaking about the peach, so that's a thing to keep in mind. And then also the liver. But when we think of the pit, it helps to moisten, so it's cool, moistening to the digestive tract, but then also similar to the apricot seeds, moistening to the lungs, so that cooling, moistening effect that it has on those systems. Also, the pits help to move blood stasis, and this is one of the more common uses in TCM, is usually combined actually with the peony roots, the churchow, the red root of the peony plant, and it is usually combined with those to treat issues of stasis, blood stasis, premature menses, lots of menstrual conditions. And so very, very, very good fruit or seed to know it. All right, lastly, I want to say something about the flower resin, what we call dao jiao in TCM. And so it's like this sappy kind of gummy resin which shows up on the flowers. Very interesting when we think of that kind of crystallization, the hardening of these resins and small pieces of sand and stone. So when we think of urinary stones, many times we find that resins of plants are used to treat indications or conditions of that nature. And so very interesting, we find that used with that, but then also painful urination, and then any type of very, very hot condition of the stomach and GI tract, such as dysentery, where there may be blood in the stool. So just definitely something to keep in mind. So definitely a tree with some wonderful gifts that you may want to consider planting or growing, or if they're already growing around you, now you know a few things that may be helpful for you. All right, so that wraps up our time together. We saw 3 plants that you may already have growing decoratively in your garden. We saw the hydrangeas, we looked at the peonies, and then the peach tree. All plants that are commonly grown across North America. And so if any of these plants interest you, make sure to reach out, drop a line, or send me a message, and we can talk about ways that you can incorporate these plants into your spaces or other plants that may be beneficial for you. All right, my name is Geoff Edwards, herbalist, gardener, acupuncturist, coming to you live from P3 Development in Milwaukee. Make sure you all take care, stay safe, and be blessed.